die. We got to rock bottom where we were close to dying. So you're desperate. You got nothing else. Like, I'm like, what else you got? Cause I tried everything else. So I'll try anything, right? I will try anything. That was my motto. I'll try anything. And so in that desperation is where the wisdom starts to come, because then you're so desperate that you'll listen to that intuition, even though the voice is a whisper.
Hello, this is Andrea from OurDayDream, back again with another awesome podcast. Today we have Amy Stein. She is a herbalist, energy medicine educator. She is also a pause trauma-informed breathwork facilitator. Her mission is to educate and empower others who suffer with physical, mental, and emotional health issues by learning to reconnect with their innate intelligence of their bodies. So without further ado, here is Amy.
Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Tell me about your story that led you to being an herbalist, energy medicine educator, pause trauma-informed breathwork facilitator. What brought you to doing that?
So it basically started about 12 years ago when I was working with other chronic pain patients and I started to resemble them. And so it was strange because they were all geriatrics. They were like 60 and 70 years old. And I was in my mid to late 20s. And I thought I led like a relatively healthy life, but my body started breaking down. I had always had symptoms as a kid, headaches and stomach aches. And I was always labeled as the kid that was too sensitive by my parents, by the doctors, by other kids. I felt a lot of things I didn't understand. And there was no one to talk to about it because it was just, I was complaining. I was trying to get out of things. There was no environment to be fostered. It was just, you're too sensitive. You need to grow thicker skin. Stop, paying attention to what everybody else is doing. Just concern yourself with what you're doing. But I couldn't because it was so loud and it became noise in my head and my body. So it would manifest in ways that I could smell things that were really uncomfortable. I could feel things. I didn't want to eat certain foods. I didn't want to wear certain clothing. And so this trajectory followed me throughout childhood. And then it got really, really intense when I was working with these chronic pain patients. And I didn't understand why it was happening. I didn't have the knowledge that I have now, obviously, because then I would have been able to fix it then. So it just started getting worse. And I didn't know what to do. And I was raised that you go to the doctor when something is wrong and they fix you. And so I was working with other doctors in the medical field. I had been doing medical research for about 4 or 5 years at that point. And before that, I was doing research at the university for years. So I knew there was something going on, but I thought it wasn't anything serious. I thought maybe I was just picking up the symptoms of my patients. I thought maybe I was just really stressed out. I was doing too much. And so when I went to the doctor, again, I heard this common story of, you're too sensitive, go to a therapist, here's this pill, and come back when it gets worse. And I said, this is pretty bad. It's been like this my whole life. It's now to the point that I'm blacking out at work. This happened in high school. I'm throwing up every morning. Like, these are all common themes that I've dealt with before. I know this is pretty bad. This is the worst it's ever been. And I was having a lot of symptoms in my body physically. So my knees were giving me problems. I was having a lot of back pain. And the story I kept being told was, you're too sensitive. It's all in your head. You're just stressed out. And so it was this theme of not being seen, heard, or believed that I had since childhood. It was just reaffirmed again. And so it felt really shitty. And I didn't understand why no one was listening to me. I wasn't the traditional patient. I was someone they knew. So I was going to these doctors I had worked with, and they were just treating me like a regular patient. And I was annoyed because I'm like, I've worked with you for 5 years. I'm not going to make this up. Like, you need to take this seriously. And because they're traditionally trained, the blood work was not showing an accurate depiction of what was happening. And because they weren't running complete panels, they didn't know what was happening because they weren't running all the tests. And a lot of times people who are highly sensitive and empathic their body will send messages before the blood work catches it. So, no one talks about any of these things. No one talks about trauma. No one talks about changing your diet. So I started to follow the functional medicine doctors because 12 years ago, summits were just starting, not even, I think maybe 10 years ago. So the functional doctors would go on these summits. They happen like maybe once every 6 months, once every 3 months. Now there's one every day. But at that time, it was just coming popular. Or
What's a summit?
A summit is where you listen to all different specialists speak about their expertise.
Gotcha.
The first summit I listened to was with Dr. Amy Myers, and she was out of Houston. And so she had all these other functional specialists on. So I listened to all of them, and I went to the library and I got out all their books because I was on this merry-go-round of going to all these different doctors and either being told that I didn't fit into the box, or they didn't know what to do with me because I didn't fit into the box. So they would just pass me along to somebody else rather than looking at the body as a whole. So you start with your GP or your internist, primary care doctor, and they then refer you out. So if it's, head issues, you go to a neurologist. So if I was sent to a neurologist for migraines and vertigo, I was sent to an endocrinologist for hormone levels, but no one really delved into the whole picture, right? The rheumatologist didn't talk to the neurologist, who didn't talk to the endocrinologist. The GI doctor didn't talk to anybody else, right? So I had all of these symptoms in all parts of my body. I had heart palpitations, I was blacking out, all these things, but no one was talking to each other. So a functional doctor looks at the body as a whole. They don't just micromanage and piece it apart. They say, why is this happening? They look for the root cause. So why is this person having these symptoms? But it's not always cut and dry, because if you're experiencing, 700 different symptoms, they don't seem related. It's hard to figure out what's going on. And I had multiple variables affecting my health that no one had education on and no one was talking about at that time. So no one was talking about multiple chemical sensitivity. No one was talking about mast cell activation and microtoxins, which is mold. No one was talking about, trauma and how that affects the body and all the systems of the body. So there were all these missing pieces. So even when I got to a doctor that was looking at the full picture, they didn't have the knowledge to help me. And it would take a bit for me to get to a functional practitioner who had some knowledge. Again, she didn't have all the knowledge. I had to do a lot of it myself. And it's this moving dragon that you're always chasing, right? So it's like you put this fire out, then this fire goes up. You put that one out, then the first fire goes back. So if you don't do it in the right way, you end up actually causing more harm to the body. The issue I had in that I was taught that the mind knows everything, which is how our society is led, right? The body doesn't know anything. When the body is broken, you go to the doctor, they fix it.
Yeah.
But that's not true. And I didn't understand that. So I was still trying to do everything in my head. So it was like this manic healing of trying to do everything and then some, because I was trying to control my world still, what little was left of it, because I had lost a lot of friends. My marriage was in the shitter because it was so stressful, and he didn't know how to fix it. And I didn't know how to fix it. And the way that we went about it, the traditional way, was not working. I was getting sicker. I was down to 85 pounds. I couldn't keep any food down.
I can relate.
Yeah. Living in the bathroom all day. I couldn't drive myself because the vertigo and the migraines were so severe. And I didn't understand, because I thought I did all these changes, but I'm not getting relief. So I changed my diet. I had eliminated chemicals. But again, I was still just doing it in my mind. I wasn't in my body because it didn't feel safe. And that was from childhood trauma, but it was also because I was in excruciating pain all day. So I didn't want to be in my body. It wasn't a safe place to be. It wasn't a place I wanted to be. So I would use these modalities to escape from my body. So the crux of it that I've learned in the last few years is you can't heal unless you're physically in your body. You can't heal without having someone support you. So I was trying to do it all by myself because I couldn't trust any of the doctors to support me because they had disappointed me. They had let me down. They hadn't believed me for years. So I was still trying to do it all myself. I was doing all the research. I was being told, you know, just because you did the research doesn't mean you're a doctor. You didn't go to medical school. And I said, well, why aren't you doing the research? I'm paying you. Why aren't you doing the research? You should do this research. You should be up on this research. This is not, you know, this is not novel concepts that we're talking about. And so I was non-compliant to them. I was a difficult patient because I was asking questions and I didn't want to take the medication. The medication was, they said, what's, you know, the medication's going to help you. It's only going to help you. But I said, it's not helping me. It's making me sicker. It's making me worse. And no one wanted to listen to that. It was take more of the medication then.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, this does not make sense. This does not make any sense. So it was this merry-go-round of all these doctors that could not help me. And it was 5 years of this. And it got to the point where I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I sat my family down and I said, I'm done. I did it your way. We did it the way we were taught to do it. It's not working. I'm not doing this anymore. And so they were not happy to hear that because they thought, well, now you're just going to die. And I said, but I'm dying going to the doctor. I'm physically, mentally exhausted. I'm getting worse. I'm not getting better. No one is listening to me. No one is talking to each other. And I'm doing all my research and I know there's value to this research, but I can't find anybody that's going to implement it for me, who's going to run the tests, who's going to, you know, do the protocols that might help. And so it was really frustrating because my hands were tied. And even though I was paying out of pocket for these doctors, they didn't want to run these functional panels because they didn't have any education on it. And they were taught to just run the standard tests, even though the standard tests do not show an accurate depiction. And many times they're based upon men. They're not female tests. They're not looking at female patients when they run these tests. They're looking at males. And the tests are done when you don't feel good. So it's not healthy numbers to be looking at.
Yeah.
When you don't feel good is when you go to the doctor, you have tests done. So you're being compared to other sick people. You're not being compared to a healthy person. So it was really frustrating to me because I knew a lot of the science and I didn't understand why things were being run this way. And I hadn't dealt with it on such a large scale. I would hear my patients talking about it and I would feel for them, but I didn't understand how bad it was until I became sick myself. And then I thought, this system is really broken and it's not helping this large population.
Yeah.
You know, autoimmune, there is no research really on it. There's no money given to it. It's because people look healthy, right? So they're not taken seriously. So they're told to go to a therapist or a psychiatrist. They're given medication to treat their brain. But a lot of times there's nothing wrong with their brain, right? Their body is giving messages because there's something wrong. So with autoimmune, the statistics is that it takes on average 20 doctors and 10 years to get a diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that diagnosis might not even be correct.
Yeah.
It just, you finally get it, right? And so there's this desperation of wanting a name for what you're fighting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, what I realized was as desperate as I was to get a name for what I was fighting, it didn't change the situation.
Yeah.
If anything, then I defined myself by I am this. And that mindset of I am this created more issues in itself. Because then your body is always listening, your cells are always listening. So when I would say, I have this, the body said, okay, that's what we have. All right,
Yeah.
that's what we'll have then. But it
Yeah.
creates, you like set yourself up for this really harmful paradigm.
Yeah.
It's like a fulfilling prophecy. I'm desperate for a diagnosis. I get a diagnosis and then I cling to that diagnosis. But it doesn't actually help the situation. And I didn't understand that for years later, right? Like these are all lessons that I did not learn all at once. These are all lessons that were imparted at times that I was ready to receive them. Because there were times that these lessons were brought to me earlier on and I didn't believe it, right? So with plant medicine, I thought, why would I use plant medicine when we have pharmaceuticals? Well, plant medicine has been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals have only been around for 200 years, right? So like why am I giving so much clout to something that hasn't been around as long as something else? So as I started to study traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and indigenous medicine, when I reached my plant medicine journey, it was fascinating to me that all of these plants that were already growing on my property had medicinal uses that I could use to deal with the symptoms I was having, that the pharmaceuticals were not handling, that were making worse. And I was able to couple them in formulas that helped me deal with my symptoms by making tinctures and infused oils and just growing plants for purposes that were going to be healing rather than for purposes that were going to be detrimental to the body, because the body recognizes plant medicine, right? It's a symbiotic relationship that we live in this world with the plants, and the plants are like us, but people don't take that seriously. But the body recognizes it as this is going to help.
I love that.
You give a pharmaceutical to the body. It's like, what is this chemical?
Right.
It's trying to just get rid of it. It knows it's not going to be helpful. And so then you have all these other symptoms and you think, oh, I'm getting worse. Well, maybe the body just doesn't like what you're putting into it. Maybe you need to eat real food. Maybe you need to stop putting chemicals on your body and into your body, right? So like people don't think of it that way. But the more natural and back to nature you can get to support the body, the more the body will show you this is the way to be. And so that's what I learned. So I began to get better, but I was still having issues, and I would plateau. So I would get better, and then I would kind of plateau, and then I would regress, and I would freak out. Oh my God, why am I regressing? What happened? What did I not do? What am I doing too much of? What am I not doing enough of? Right. And then the control freak would come in. Well, maybe we need to do this now. Maybe we need to do that. But it was still exhausting. I was still on this merry-go-round of trying to do all the things. And my body was screaming at me like, this is too much. We need to rest. You're not prioritizing rest. I was still not in my body. So plant medicine was the gateway to alternative healing for me. And I had been doing alternative healing before, chiropractic, acupuncture, but it was never working.
Yeah.
It was not helping any of my symptoms, and it was never explained to me the systems that they were using, right? And so it was all kind of didn't make sense to me. I couldn't see it, I didn't understand it. So if I can't see it, I can't believe it. So I did plant medicine for a few years, and then I embarked on energy medicine. And I'd already had experience with doing yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong, but I didn't understand like all the energy medicine, the umbrella that exists with energy medicine. So the more I began to go down that rabbit hole and do the research, I began to understand that even if I don't see it, it can still exist. And that was when the idea of surrender doesn't need to be a dirty word started to sink in. So even though I can't see this higher power, whatever that may be, right, that I can relate to, I can ask for help from. That was a foreign concept to me because I wasn't raised religious. I wasn't raised spiritual. So I was doing yoga, but I wasn't doing it for spiritual reasons. I was reading these books that were spiritual, but I didn't really understand them. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It just seemed really foreign to me. And so a person close to me, one of my yoga teachers, had said to me, what if you thought of surrender as rather than giving up, giving over, asking for help? And I thought, well, that's a novel concept, but I still don't understand what that means. And so the more I delved into energy medicine, the more I understood that we are all energy. Everything around us is energy. Even if we don't see it or understand it, you can change it, right? So I could do things that would support my body rather than exhaust my body.
Yeah.
I could do these energy techniques that would protect my energy, would establish boundaries, would allow me to interact in situations that may not be healthy for me, but then I wouldn't be completely annihilated by them. So I began to study this more, and the idea of asking for help from something that I couldn't see, just trusting that that would be there to provide for me, to protect me, to guide me, to keep me grounded, to keep me safe. And the more I opened myself up to the idea of it, the easier it got, and more things came into alignment. And I thought, okay, there's something here. I'm going to stick with this. So I read more books, I incorporated more routines, but I was still doing everything in my head. There was still this disconnect, right? I was just present from here up where I am on the camera. The rest of my body was dead to me because it was, I thought, failing me still. It's still broken. You know, it's this old story of my body is broken. It's failing me. I don't know how to help myself. So I'm going to just stick in my head because I can understand that. But it's still this disconnect of I wasn't in my body, so I couldn't fully heal. I couldn't process any trauma. And when trauma is not processed, it leads to imbalance in the body, which can lead to disease and illness. And so, you know, this was not talked about. So I started studying it 5 years ago. It was like first started studying it. Now it's being talked about. But back then I would mention it to my doctor and she was like, well, what are you going to do about that? I'm like, I don't really know. I'm not sure. And so I did all the things that were recommended and it didn't help. And if anything, I got re-traumatized. And I thought, well, this isn't working. What am I doing wrong? And it was still this idea of I wasn't trusting somebody else to support me through my healing journey. I was not living in my body. I was doing everything still in my mind. It was still that manic healing of what else can I do? What am I missing? What puzzle piece is still not here? And I was still looking outside of myself to be fixed, still giving my power away to somebody else. And so it wasn't until a few years ago, like really last summer, that I signed up for the trauma-informed breathwork training because my intuition, this voice that I quieted for so long, right, was telling me to do it. And I thought, I don't want to do another program. I've done so many programs. I can't do something else. Like I don't have it in me. And it kept coming up like, nope, you're going to do this program. This program is going to do something. You need to do it. And I thought I've been doing breathwork for years. But again, I was doing breathwork to escape from my body then. I was using it as a way to get out of the pain, out of the discomfort, out of whatever was coming up that wanted to be released. I was like, nope, we can't go there. We're going to push that back down. Right. I can't handle that. Because in our society, we're taught not to feel our feelings, not to feel not to voice what you're feeling or what you're experiencing. So we hold our breath to not feel the uncomfortable feelings, the dark feelings, to not feel those painful sensations. And by holding the breath, you cause more trauma to the body because the body's like, oh, what's going on? Why are we not breathing? What's happening? And when you breathe shallowly and you hold your breath, you cause even more issues. And so I was still not doing the body work. So I signed up for the training and I thought, well, I've dealt with a lot of my trauma. This should be okay. Like, this will be fine. This training is going to be a piece of cake. I'm just going to have the skills now to help somebody else who's had trauma. So I don't re-traumatize them like I was re-traumatized. But I think I'm fine. I've dealt with all my trauma. And the training was really, really uncomfortable. It was painful. I wanted to quit a few times because it was bringing up stuff that I thought I had healed, that I thought I had, I moved past that. I'm done. I dealt with it. I hadn't because it was still so much locked down. And because I was not in my body, it was coming back up. And I was like, oh, this again? Oh, no, I handled this already. Why is this coming back up? Right. Mm-hmm. And it was really uncomfortable and I was not happy. And I thought, what is going on? And that's when I realized, because all of the healing I had done was still just in my mind. Right. So I thought I could visualize my way out of it. I could rewire my neural pathways, I could rewire my brain, and I would be cured. It would all be better. But it wasn't. None of that worked because I still was not in my body. And so this disconnect of the mind from the body, from the spirit, there is no healing. I mean, there's a little bit of healing, but it's not full healing. It's not where you can release the demons, right? And we all have demons, whether you've had big trauma or little t trauma. We all have things that we hold on to. We all have things we don't process because unlike the animal kingdom, we don't deal with our trauma. The body is designed to heal. The body is designed to process the trauma. We don't let it happen.
Yeah.
We get in the way of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a novel concept to me to trust my body. Because again, this whole idea of my body is broken, it failed me. Even though I knew that that was not true on some level, it was still the story being told to me. It was still the story the society was telling me, that you're broken, you're always going to be broken, you're not going to heal. You can't heal yourself, you need a doctor. You know, it's not going to work. Even though I was proving it wrong because I wasn't in my body, I was getting, you know, the 2 steps forward, 2 steps back thing. Like, what is going on here? And that's when I realized when I was in my body that things were different, that it felt differently, that the emotions I was feeling would pass quickly. They wouldn't consume me like I was taught they would or thought they would. The sensations were signs from my body that there was something wrong. They were just messages to help me.
Yeah.
And I had been taught not to listen to them, that the body didn't know. The mind knows best, not the body. But the mind is simply part of the body. And it doesn't know best. It's, you know, it's a whole system that works together. And when you don't allow it to work together, you create more imbalance in the body. So this was the first time that I was in my body, feeling my feelings, feeling the sensations as they were coming up in real time, allowing them to be processed through. And I thought, well, this is a lot easier. Why has no one taught me this before? How come I didn't know this? I'm 38 years old. How do I not know this yet? And it's because no one teaches this. And it's something that has been around for thousands of years, breath work. And the modern science is only now catching up to it. But it is a practice that has been around in all indigenous medicine and Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine and traditional plant medicine for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Right? So like all of these things that have been around for thousands of years, but we don't give them any credence to because modern science.
They're called pseudoscience
Exactly.
now.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah.
But it's not true. And so
No.
when I was able to wrap my brain around that and change the mindset and the belief system and create a new story, that I get to decide what's best for me, not the doctor, not society, not the insurance company. I get to decide.
Yeah.
And when I take my power back, which I had been doing for the last few years with, you know, I would listen to my doctor, but I would tell her I'm going to do my own research. I'm going to try this path first. And if it doesn't work, we'll revisit your path, but I'm not comfortable going that path. And I stood in my power that this is my body. I know my body better than anybody else. And this is what I'm going to do. And so just with taking my power back and beginning to listen to my intuition, things started to shift. And then when I did the breathwork training, my intuition got louder. And the message from my body became clearer. It wasn't like another language. I was able to understand what it was trying to tell me. I was able to then make the changes and see the difference. So there's an innate intelligence to the body, just like there's an innate intelligence to Mother Nature. And so when I don't listen to my body and I deviate back to my mind, to my old programming, I pay the price. And I regret it most of the time.
Right.
Right. But when I listen to my body and its intelligence, I'm in a lot better situation. Not to say that, you know, it's all roses and everything goes my way. It doesn't, but I'm not as affected by it as I was before. The triggers are not as hard. The triggers are not as frequent. They are not as severe. They are not as long lasting. And I'm able to reframe the situation in a way that doesn't have to be so catastrophic. So even if I have a setback, I understand the healing journey is not linear. It's filled with ups and downs. And sometimes it's like a big swiggle line. It just goes round and round and round, right? Until you reach a new insight. So I'm okay with that now, 12 years later, right? I'm okay with the idea that my body knows better. I accept that. Do I always follow it? No, because I'm human, right? And I'm going to be learning these lessons until the day I leave this physical body. But knowing this and experiencing it and watching other people experience it is what has made it so profound in a way that was not profound to me before, in a way that felt really strange. It was weird. I didn't understand it. So, I'm going to label it woo-woo, right? I'm going to label it as pseudoscience.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with people not liking it now. It doesn't really bother me. That's fine. Because you get to choose, right? So if you want to choose to go that route, that's your choice. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my position. It's not my purpose to do that. I'll support you along the way, but I'm not going to advocate for you to go that route. But again, that's your choice. And so for me, it's really important that anyone I speak with, that they understand that they get to choose what's best for them, and that I will see them and hear them and believe them no matter what, because we are not seen and heard and believed in the community of autoimmunity and chronic illness. And so I think it's really important for people to know that someone has their back, that someone has been there through it and seen the other side of it. And I don't ever say that I'm cured, because there is no cure. I can put situations into remission. I can put diagnoses into remission, but I still contend with symptoms on a daily basis. And that's just my body's way of telling me, you need to pay attention to this. This is still something that we have to pay attention to. This is something that we still need to give credence to. And so I think it's really important to understand that it's a practice. It's not a one and done. It's not magic. Like,
Yeah.
there's no magic wand and then it just all goes back to normal. It's a practice that I choose to embark on every single day. And that's why I'm able to hold space for other people, because I do my own work every single day. I face trauma of past trauma every single day, and I continue to do the work to release that trauma so that I can continue to heal on all levels, mind, body, and spirit. And so it hasn't been easy by any means. It has been quite a journey and has been difficult. But the person that I am today, I like a lot more than the person I was 12 years ago.
Right.
And this person is authentic, where that person was people pleasing, trying to be liked, trying to protect herself, trying to control everything. And those protectors were there to keep me safe. It's what I knew, but they no longer serve me now as an adult who's doing the work, right? So I think that's an important point to touch on, in that we all have these protectors, whether we choose to use addictive behaviors, if we choose to be violent, aggressive, if we choose to be the victim, if we choose to be the comic relief. These are all protectors that formed as children to keep us safe. And now we have survived, right? We have gotten to this point. We've survived childhood, we've survived early adulthood, teenage years, so on and so forth. These protectors now may no longer serve us. They may in fact need to be released. They may in fact need to be allowed to go on in another way, because we don't have this need to have this protector anymore. But it's the familiar, right? It's so when we're triggered, this is what we do. That's your protector, right? So when you're in traffic and you want to scream at people, your aggressors, your protectors, what kept you safe. If you were bullied, if you were abused, that aggressor kept you safe. But as an adult now, who is hopefully in a safe space and can establish safety for themselves, which is part of the process of healing, that protector doesn't need to be so apparent anymore. They can take a break. They can move on to doing something else, right? So I think it's important to understand that the work keeps going. It's not a one and done. It is a process that is filled with ups and downs. It is a process that you need to be supported on. You cannot do it alone. Believe me, I've tried and I've got the t-shirt to prove it. You can't do it by yourself. And it's important to understand that. But there is other ways, right? You don't have to go the traditional route.
Right. I think about empath, and that's not talked about enough. Because people just think that they should have a reason for feeling the things that they're feeling, or they should have a label or an identification for how it is that they're feeling. And sometimes there's people that don't know why they're feeling what they're feeling because they're in an environment that's moving them to feel a certain way. And, you know, like in situations where you've had a lot of past trauma and things like that, you know, that could cause some cognitive dissidence and different things like that. And it's like, why is my mind all of a sudden feeling so blurred, you know, and not really having even a trigger there. It's just like all of a sudden this, you know, overwhelming feeling of emotion inside of you that you can't even identify with.
Right. And many empaths take on energies that are not their own, right? So it's about learning what that is about and how that comes to be. And so back in the day, during indigenous times, right, when we were nomads, people who were highly sensitive, who were empathic, who could pick up on the energies around them, the energies of other people, they kept the tribe safe. So they were the ones that knew a storm was coming. They were the ones who knew, you know, bison were coming. They were the ones who knew that that berry was not safe to eat. They were the ones who could feel things, smell things, see things, because their brain operates differently in that. But it can also, in a modern day society, when you have so many triggers and constant stimulation, lead to overwhelm and exhaustion. So for me, and I'm not sure if this is for you as well, like I'm very rigid with, you know, how much screen time I have.
Yeah.
You know, I don't go on social media. I do what I have to do and I get off, right? Like I don't watch the news. Because all of those activities create a state of overwhelm in my body. They create
I'm very careful with what I'm feeding my body.
Right, what you're ingesting. Yep.
I always have to make sure that I'm aware of what it is. And, you know, in a work environment, that's not always attainable. But, you know, on my own time, I'm very careful as to what I'm feeding myself. And also you get extremely overwhelmed by the day because you're taking on so much that you really need to have that time where it's like, I'm not doing anything right now.
To rest, because you're constantly overstimulated. There's all variables, there's all this overstimulation, there's all this noise. And you take it on, and it's physically and mentally, emotionally exhausting. And when you don't have the skills to learn how to deal with that, it manifests as physical symptoms. Right? So migraines, stomach aches, anxiety, all of that is what happens.
Autoimmune disease.
Right, exactly. And so people don't understand that, right? So I wasn't taught that. I mean, I had to learn all of it on my own. And so now there are more people talking about it. Like there are a lot more people talking about highly sensitive person and empathic than there was. But there is still a disconnect. And that's why I'm trying to bridge that disconnect with people who are suffering from autoimmune, to let them know that it's not your fault. Right? You didn't do this to yourself. Your body is not attacking itself. It's attacking an issue. There's an issue that's going on, and the body is just trying to help you. The body was designed to heal and rebalance. But if you're not prioritizing sleep, you're not letting it heal. If you're not prioritizing rest and quiet and alone time, you're not allowing it to heal. And all of these tips are really important for people who are empathic and highly sensitive. They're like, they're necessaries, right? Like to me, they're necessaries. If I don't do them, I don't function. But it's also good practice for everybody, because we live in such a toxic world, and toxic as far as chemicals, as far as negativity, as far as violence, as far as whatever you want to label it, right? Like there's a lot of bad things going on. And so you can sit and dwell on that and allow it to fester and feed and create more illness in the body, or you can choose what you're going to ingest, right? What you're visually going to ingest, what you're orally going to ingest, which, what you're going to listen to, all of that is a choice. No one is telling you have to watch the news.
Right.
No one's telling you have to be on social media.
Right.
So to me, it's really important. Like, that's the first line of defense I always track with people, is addressing toxins. And that is a broad category, because it's chemical toxins, it's food, it's personal care products, it's visual toxins, it's all of it. And so it can feel really overwhelming. So when you can have somebody who can support you in that and say, hey, I did it this way and it didn't work, so maybe we want to try it this way.
Right.
And have an individual approach for that person and what their needs are, it works a lot better.
Right. I think too, for an empath, because once I actually like learned and stumbled across the word, I was like, wow, like that makes so much sense, especially whenever, you're a single mother, you're raising teenagers, their hormone levels, they're up and down like a roller coaster, and you just feel like so out of control because you can't even control your own emotions. But what's crazy to me is that for a long time, and it's really profound too, because I kept searching and seeking, like, okay, well, how do I guard myself from these things that are happening to me and these feelings that I'm having? And, this feeling of being out of control and how I'm actually feeling. And I realized that it was like you said, like, you just keep pushing it down. So not only am I pushing down my past trauma, now I'm pushing down things that other were doing that had nothing to do with anything to do with my life. And so, I feel these emotions, and the spiritual community and different teachings, kind of push in the direction to where, like, you have to feel good. You have to think positive. You have to, reframe your mind. But then if you're not understanding that that process could lead you to a place of self-condemnation for these feelings, and that self-condemnation is that very thing that actually pushes it down inside to where it arises, in other ways, shapes, and forms. And so I've really been working on just like allowing myself, like, you're feeling these things, and giving that compassion and love, rather than being like, stop feeling that way, or why are you being so pessimistic, or why are you being so negative right now, and just loving myself through that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with a lot of mindset and mindfulness programs. And I know, because I experience them like you, is that, well, if you just change your brain, it's going to work. It doesn't work like that, because if there's still a disconnect with the body and you're not feeling your feelings, you're not feeling the sensations and allowing the body to process it, it's not going to work. It may work for a little bit, but it's not going to have lasting results. And so that was the struggle I had, right? So I rewired my brain. I did the neuroplasticity. I did all these things. It's not working. And because I wasn't in my body, and I was still, I got to do all the shoulds and the coulds. And why didn't I know this?
Why am I not doing it?
Right. Judgments, expectations, shaming, all of this. And it creates this toxic environment internally and externally. So you're just creating more trauma, right? But we're not taught any of this. So it's okay if you didn't know better, because that's normal. No one knows better, right? So it's doing the work. And as you've done, it's doing the work and seeing what works for you, right? So there is no magic formula. So what works for me may not work for you, but there may be aspects of it that resonate. So you run with that, and maybe you go down a different rabbit hole. Right? Because we're all unique, and we all have unique gifts. We all have had unique life experiences. And so some people choose to learn from them and some people don't, right? And that's what it is. There is no shame, there is no judgment, there is no expectation. But because the society we are brought up in, it's filled with shame, judgment, expectations. And if you're vulnerable and you feel things, you're labeled as weak. You're labeled as you're not part of the tribe. We're going to bully you. We're going to ostracize you. But the people like us are the people who pick up on the issues first. Right? We're the canaries in the coal mine. We're the ones who experience all of this first. And so then we're the ones who learn if we choose to learn, right, through these experiences. We are the ones that then can impart these gifts to help others.
Right.
We can be the leaders. We can lead the tribe still in that indigenous mentality, right? So that's the way I look at it, is that you can choose to have your experience, and you can choose to learn from it, or you can choose to let your protectors still be present, right? You can still have your victimhood, you can still have your addictive behavior, you can still have your aggressor, your, there's so many of them. So whichever you want to choose, right? Whatever is your fancy. But when you continue to stay that, you continue to stay stuck. And the body can't evolve. The body can't release the trauma. The body can't do the work it was designed to do. So it's actually causing you more harm, more stress, mental, emotional, and physical. But we don't understand that until we do the work.
Right.
So we find something where you go, oh, this feels different. It was the first time in 35 years I didn't have anxiety. I'm like, what? Not to say I don't have anxiety still, I do, but I'm not living with it 24/7.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
what is this? What is this to not live with anxiety 24/7? I don't know what this is, a novel feeling. What does this feel like? Well, that's me doing the work and allowing my body to do the work and supporting my body rather than blaming my body, shaming my body, judging it, that it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. It is. My story is different, right? My belief system is different. And I'm just going to touch on that quickly, is that the belief systems we have of how things are supposed to look, how things are supposed to go, who we're supposed to be, are formed by age 7. So Bruce Lipton talks about this. He first talked about it in the 1970s. So it's been around for a while, but people are only starting to wake up to it recently. Joe Dispenza talks about this too, is that these belief systems were not yours. They were based upon the people around you, imparting this belief system onto you of what you're supposed to be, be seen and not heard. Good girls don't cry, they're polite.
I'll give you something to cry about.
Right, exactly. I heard that as a child too. So these systems were imparted on our parents by the people who brought them up, by the society, their parents, relatives, whoever, right? So they're not actually your beliefs, but they keep you stuck, and they keep you in this unhealthy mentality and in this dissociated state where there is no connection with the mind, the body, and the spirit. So what I teach people to do is question your beliefs. Do they still hold truth for you right now? Like that when something happens and this comes up and this is how I'm going to respond to it. And I know when I responded this way in the past, it didn't work out. So if I choose to now respond differently, could I do that? Would that be okay? What would that look like? How would that feel? Right? So it's a constant being aware, not being asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
Right? Being aware of what's going on in your life. What are the triggers? What is around that trigger? How does it feel? What does it feel like in your body? Does it have a color? Does it look like something? Is it an animal? Is there a sound, right? So that's all somatic healing, is getting into the body and expressing the way the body wants you to express it, to feel it the way the body is presenting it to you, and without judgment, without shame, without expectation, just as what it is.
There was a therapist that said, he's like, you're not your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
You're the you that can actually see that you're thinking.
Right.
And what you're thinking about. Yeah. And so,
observer.
And that's what, keeps me breaking off these old thought patterns and the way that I was raised. You're a bad girl, things like that, is just kind of like observing what it is that my mind's actually doing, but not actually identifying myself with that, but identifying, well, where did this form in my past, and and realizing in that moment, well, but this is where I am now. I'm not that 5-year-old that was
Exactly.
being shamed for smiling. So, and it's like, and like you said, it's a process, and it's nothing. We're human beings. We don't have a light switch, and I think that's what, the way that society moves us right now. It's like, well, if you go to the doctor will say, here's this pill, and then that will be your light switch. So, you can fix yourself like that. Well, then, I was in the same place as you. And it started mostly at 34, but I could see it progressing before that. Is, I would go to all these doctors and therapists, and, and they would give me these quick fixes. And so I tried most depression medication out there, and I'm like, I'm just broken. There's nothing that can fix me. I'm just broken, but nobody told me that it was the things that were running around in my mind. Nobody told me that it was the past trauma that I was going through that was nonstop on repeat. Nobody told me it was because, like, Andrea, you're accepting things in your life. You're worthy of more. You shouldn't be accepting the things that you're accepting into your life. And nobody really teaches you how to cope with that, but they're like, here, let's write some stuff down, let's go back into your trauma. I'm gonna send you home, and you can go out there and get so intoxicated. You're lucky that you're still alive because you're dropped off in the middle of your childhood, but we'll give you a medication that's going to add more symptoms onto you. And just like you said, it got to the point where my body was so broken down. I was losing 10 pounds a week. I'm down to a 00. And, I'm like, well, how far is this going to go? Am I going to go into a toddler size? Like, I don't understand what's happening here. And, the doctor's laughing at me, like, you have anxiety, calm down, it's okay. And I'm like, well, okay, so I'm a single mom. I'm setting my clock for every 2 hours to force myself to eat a couple bites of food to stay alive. And so I'm going to go to the point where I need a feeding tube because I can't eat anymore. My mouth is raw because I'm not used to eating, and I can't put food down. And it's like, oh, well, like, it's no big deal. It's not that big of a deal. I'm like, okay, well, so then I'm going to die, and so I was in that same situation. Next thing you know, I had like 3 surgeries in 1 month. They're ripping out my body parts, and it's like, well, maybe that will fix it. Well, no, that didn't fix it, because I still had the same symptoms after all these tests, after all this, them laughing at me, after these things being cut out. I still felt it in my body. And that was because, like you said, whenever I finally recognized that I allowed this to take place, that I was allowing myself to die, was whenever I could start that healing. And the more I did that, the more healthy I felt, and the more energized I felt, and the less I had to go to the doctor, and the less I had to stress out and worry,
Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's the impactfulness of, if you allow the lesson to be there and be open to it, rather than the stories of what you're told by doctors and running commentary in your mind, that you can heal yourself. You don't need to look to somebody else to do it, because your body knows exactly what you need. And if you can be open to that and trust that, right? That's the hard part, right? To be open to it and to trust it. But like you and I, we got to rock bottom where we were close to dying. So you're desperate. You got nothing else. Like, I'm like, what else you got? Because I tried everything else. So I'll try anything, right? I will try anything. That was my motto. I'll try anything. And so in that desperation is where the wisdom starts to come, because then you're so desperate that you'll listen to that intuition. Even though the voice is a whisper, you'll start to listen to it, because you're just, I got nothing else.
I got nothing else. Yeah. So, like, the same with me. Like, I thought meditation was weird. You know what I mean? because I didn't hit that desperate state
Mhm.
where it was like, okay, well, all this stuff that I didn't think was weird wasn't helping me. So like maybe I should try this stuff that I think's weird because they seem pretty happy.
Mhm.
Like they seem like they have a light that just shines around them. And it's like, I see people out there that aren't doing these things and they're miserable and they're grumpy and they're blaming the world.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to take personal responsibility
Yep.
for my actions and reactions and the way that I'm showing up in the world. And so, you know, and it's trying these things. And it's really sad that we're that stubborn. We have to get to that place of
I know.
desperation. So, you know, we can only hope that videos like this getting out or posts or people talking about it and stuff like that could make people, you know, humble themselves enough to where they don't have to get to that point where, okay, so I'm dying. Now I got to hurry up and fix it. Well, that's not the case.
Mhm. And that's the value of you and I sharing our story,
Yeah.
is that people will then know they're not alone, right? There is another way. And that these things that are labeled as woo-woo and weird, there's actually validity to
They've
that.
been around a long time.
Right.
Right.
The thing with meditation is if you've had a lot of trauma, you may not be able to meditate because the body feels it's not safe for you to go into that subconscious state, because then you'll remember things that you don't have the skills to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So I couldn't meditate for years. I still have struggle with it, but I could do breath work because I was in my body. I wasn't trying to be in my head and quiet the thoughts. I was just focusing on what my body was doing, just focusing on the next breath. That was it in that moment. So if people can do these practices that take them back to themselves, right? So I talk about getting outside, witnessing something that's bigger than you, something that was you did not create, getting into your body just by taking 3 deep breaths and feeling the shift that can happen with those 3 deep breaths. You know, it will teach you to remember how to breathe properly, right? Just being open to something different, even if
Yeah.
it seems weird, just being open to that. What could that be like? Just stay curious. What could that be like? What could that look like? How could that work out differently, right? It's not making this gigantic step. When we celebrate the small wins add up to big steps. So I've had a lot of small wins over 12 years and they've got me to where I am today. But I needed those 12 years to get me to where I am. And all the lessons and experience that I had. Because if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be able to share my story. I would still have a lot of shame around it. I would still be triggered by my own story of I can't believe I lived through that. Right? So it's when you get to the place where your healing has happened that you're able to share your story in a way like this that we're talking about and not be triggered by it, not have shame around it, to own it. Yeah,
Right.
this happened. And it's not unique. This situation happened to me. And I hate to tell you, it happened to a lot of people, right? It's just not talked about. So by being brave and courageous and sharing your story, you're helping so many other people without even realizing it, right? Without the effort. You know, you and I are just talking. We're just sharing our stories. But there's a value to that for everybody. There's value for you and me. We're able to validate each other. I'm able to say, I see you, I hear you, I believe you, I understand what that was like, right? There's value for that for everybody. And it doesn't need to be hard. You could just take small steps.
Right.
Feel manageable.
Right. A lot of people out there that are just being introduced to meditation or have just heard about it, or you know, in simplicity. And the biggest thing that I see that people get wrong is that they believe that they're supposed to actually stop their mind
Right, exactly.
from moving in meditation. So they're like, I can't meditate because my mind won't stop. And I'm like, but that's not the point of meditation. Like, so, and I tell people that it's important to know that I believe that that's your only gateway to learning how to train your brain other than the way that it has always worked. And so, you have a lot of trauma in your life, it's nonstop, all this bad. Well, if I'm in the middle of meditating and my brain goes, this way, and I take it back to the breath and then it pops out again someplace else, I go back to the breath. What I'm doing is I'm telling my mind, you're not in charge, but I am. And the longer you do it, the more your mind is submissive to what it is that you're telling it to do. And that travels along with you throughout your whole day. And you notice that your mind's instead, because I know me back before that time period where I said that I was just like dead. You might as well have said I was a zombie because I was already dead, spirit, mind, body, soul. That my mind was just 100 mph. It was nonstop. It would not quit. And so, and a lot of creative people out there, they're the same way. Their mind's constantly moving. But what is it full of?
Right.
And how is that affecting your life? And meditation's that only way to really feel like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to enjoy this moment right now that we're in. We're going to watch the sunset and not be thinking about 100,000 other things outside of what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, our brain was not designed to be on 24/7, right? But we have constant stimulation, screens and noise and constant thoughts, right? So by doing meditation or doing breath work, you're allowing the brain to rest. You're allowing the brain to shut down and let the body work. And the brain needs that rest. Like, I schedule breaks throughout my day just to rest, to just unplug. Because when I don't, the monkey mind is worse. Then the physical symptoms start. Then I'm down with a migraine for a week, right? So like, I still push myself because, again, I'm human, right? I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to do this perfectly. Nobody is. But I'm able to recognize the behaviors that are not doing me service. Where before, I didn't want to recognize those behaviors because I had to do all the things. If I didn't do all the things, I was failing. So yeah, the practice of mindfulness, of spirituality, of breath work, of Qigong, Tai Chi, whatever it is that gets you back into the body and gets the mind to rest is only going to bring you benefits. It's only going to bring restoration and allow
You'll
for
notice
healing.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to have anybody tell you like this will fix you. It's like you take a medication that say that it fixes you, but you don't actually see what's happening, right? But with meditation, it's one of those things like, I'm going to give you this prescription, go meditate.
Right.
You're going to see the effects of that.
Right. You're going to feel it.
You're going to feel it. You're going to notice it. You're going to see it. You're going to notice that you're able to be in the moment more. You're able to appreciate things more. People fly off the mouth at you. You're able to roll it off your shoulders a little bit better. But, try doing meditation for a little bit and then not doing it. You can feel that too, right? Because that's a journey that needs to be lifelong. Because if I go, a couple weeks, a couple months without meditating, I'm thrown around a lot more in my circumstances in my daily life. Like, I'm easily moved. I'm easily irritated. I'm more exhausted. Like, you notice these things. So it's like, at the very least, if you tried it, there's a promise attached to that you will notice a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, for a lot of people, that difference feels weird, right? Like, oh, what is this? They're waiting for the other shoe to drop. But that difference, if you can just sit in it and appreciate it and be grateful for it, the ability to just be in the moment, to allow things to roll off your shoulder, to allow yourself to not be as triggered, as affected by the world going around you, then you can appreciate the value for it. Because the chaos, people feed on the chaos. They feed on the drama. They feed on that negativity.
They create their own hell.
Exactly. But it's not healthy. And I used to do that. I would feed off the chaos and the drama. And now when there are people like that come up in my life, I'm not going there. Right. Like, so I have hard and fast rules now about who's allowed to sit at my table in my personal life and in my professional life and in my healing life. And if I get a vibe, I trust that vibe now, because that's my body saying this is not good for you, or this is good for you, right? If it feels light and positive, then that is a path you want to explore. But if it feels chaotic and dark and filled with drama and things like that, I'm not going that route. I learned my lesson the hard way. I'm not doing that again, right? And those are people who are struggling, and those are their protectors. Those protectors kept them safe. They survived their childhood. They survived their teenage years because of those protectors. But those protectors now, as adulthood, are not keeping them safe. They're keeping them in that same propensity, that same vicious cycle. And it's really hard to break out of it. I understand. You and I both broke out of it. It was not easy, right? But it was a choice that we made. So again, no one's telling you what you have to do and how you have to do it.
Right.
We're just offering insights on what worked for us and the value that we have in the things that we picked up. And again, I did a lot of different things, and I'm sure you did too. And I don't do all of them anymore.
You're right.
Because they don't either resonate, they don't work. I just don't want to do them. And I honor that. Hey, that was great when I did that. I learned from that, but I don't do it anymore.
Right.
So that's part of the process too. Things are going to fall away, and you're going to keep some things that still work and still feel good. And that's the way it's supposed to be, right? There is no hard and fast rule. There is no magic formula. I hate to tell people that, but there isn't. And there is no magic pill. There is no magic pill. And I don't have one.
Yeah. I've been going, I've had like a really strenuous year all year, and it's like everything I do just turns to complete shit. Like nothing is going right. I'm like trying to see the good in everything. I'm trying to see the positive, but I'm like a roller coaster. I'm going up and down because I'll get attached to what's happening and then I'll let it go. And then something else will happen. I'll get attached to it and then I'll let it go. And it was since January, and here it is September, that it was 3 weeks, not even, probably 2 weeks ago, I realized, like I said, that I was suppressing these things by condemning myself or by trying to change it or trying to move it someplace else. And it's that very suppression of stuff that sometimes your life's going to teach you, like, hey, you got some things that you need to attend to. So if you're really, I think, using your life as a mirror, to see like, well, what's happening in my life and what is that actually forcing me to do? So I was watching it all year because I knew that if all these things were happening, there's something deep down inside of there. And I don't know how to get it out because I thought I had already attended to it. I thought that I had already attended to a lot of things, but I'm like, there's something buried down deep. So then I use my mind and I start analyzing, well, maybe it's this, or maybe it's that, or maybe it's this. And how do I fix this? And what do I do about this? And so your mind starts analyzing the situation, trying to figure it out, which is good if your mind does that because it makes you open to learning something. But realizing then that I didn't need to do anything at all. I needed to stop doing. I needed to stop dealing and handling it and trying to fix it, because me fixing it was only suppressing it, was only bringing to me more bad, which ended up taking me into a place where in August, here I am yet again. There's stuff wrong within my insides. I'm sick. I'm in the hospital I'm in the ER twice in a week. I'm getting a colonoscopy. There's something inside of there. It's like, and this is the rolling rock. And I think that being an empath really does make that, even if you're aware, even if you know, you're so susceptible for these things and it's a process. So now I could get to the point where, oh my gosh, I'm dying. Oh, my body's sick. Oh, I'm feeling all these things. Oh, this is happening. Oh, that's happening. But if you were to instead just wade through it, wade through your emotions, wade through the way that the body moved you, that year, and, the progression of the illness, it's the I am that really holds that there. You know what I mean? And it's the trying to fix situations, I believe, that really keeps you there. And it's the act of doing that keeps you from being.
Right. But that's just your protector, right? Your protector is taught to do things because when you stood still, maybe there was violence, there was trauma, there was something, right? So if you were doing things all the time, it was a way of controlling. I have the same protector, and it tends to run my life sometimes in a really hostile way. So then I'll get migraines for 2 weeks and I won't be able to do anything. My body will say, oh, you're not going to listen. Now you're going to have to listen because you can't get out of bed. So you still fall into these patterns. Again, it's a lifelong lesson, but it can be harder for people who are empathic and highly sensitive because we just feel things more, and our brain is just wired differently. It's a trait that it does not go away. Your body, your brain is wired that way for a reason. And so it's about being open to what that reason may be, right? And that's why breath work was so big for me, because I didn't have to try to figure it out. Because when I try to figure it out, I'm still trying to control and do, as you've realized, right? But with breath work, I can surrender to the body, and then I'll just get an insight. Maybe it's in the shower. Maybe I'll have a dream. Maybe it's when I'm stuck in traffic. Maybe it's when I'm journaling, whatever it may be, right? Maybe I'm just cooking dinner and it comes to me. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting what that's about. That was my body saying, now we're ready to, you're ready now. We're going to tell you what it is. And then you can make the change. So when those patterns keep coming up for a long period of time, like you said, for the past year, I mean, it's just the body's way of trying to get your attention. Hey, there's something here. There's something here. Then. Yeah. And it's like an onion. You're always peeling back the layers. It's never over. It's never over. Because when you think that you're done, there's something else. It's just when you can accept that and not be upset by it. Again, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the reality of it, that you are going to be doing this work until the day you leave this physical body. That's it. And if you choose not to do the work, that's your choice, but it's probably going to be a lot harder. So even though we've done the work and it hasn't been easy, it's still easier than people who are choosing not to do the work, right? Like they say ignorance is bliss. And I say, yeah, sometimes I like to go back to that idea, but it actually isn't, because your body is always trying to get your attention. The body is always trying to help you. It's on your side. We're just not taught that. Right.
Right. This is a great conversation. Thank you for it.
Thank you, Andrea. It was great.
How do people get a hold of you then?
So they can go on the Facebook page. It's called Amy, the Amateur Herbalist. There's a lot of free information on there about energy medicine, plant medicine. I post tons of free information, free articles, recipes. Also the same name, Amy, the Amateur Herbalist, on YouTube. There's gardening videos, there's foraging videos, there's recipe videos. Yeah, so I basically teach people, eat your weeds. There's wisdom there. There's wisdom there to get back in touch with nature, to stop taking advantage of it and abusing it, because it's the same as us. It's there for your benefit. You just have to appreciate it.
Yeah. I thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Again, if you like this message, please hit subscribe, because we have an awesome guest coming up every week and I don't want you to miss out. God bless. Have an awesome week. I'll see you next time. Bye.